Extremely sorry, it just timed out, so I had to go back, connect again. Okay, so we are on the past history part. So, what else we have to see in the past history? So, in the past history, my important point to emphasize was a past history of any similar complaint in the breast or any interventions taken in the breast. So, why is it important? It is basically to rule out if the patient had some underlying disorder before or not. Suppose the patient has a past history of, let's say, some atypical hyperplasia, or let's say another past history of undergoing some breast lump for which she was biopsied and for which she had maybe she has the report of it, or maybe she doesn't have. But any past history of a breast complaint in the same or the opposite breast, or a past history of breast biopsy to undergo on the same or the opposite breast, is a factor which is taken into consideration for CA breast, or basically risk factor for CA breast. That is why I was asking about the past history. And the second two important things in the past in the personal history are smoking and in families, smoking and alcohol. Both of these, smoking and alcohol, indirectly lead to hyperestrogenic states through the increased conversion in. Can someone tell me how does alcohol and smoke, or how does alcohol in general lead to an increased estrogenic state? What does alcohol do in the body which leads to an increased estrogenic state? So basically what alcohol does, alcohol increases the peripheral conversion to estrogen in the female body, and that is the same mechanism by which obesity acts. Basically alcohol and obesity, these are things which increases the conversion of estrogen in the periphery, or production of estrogens through the periphery. As we all know, there's a mechanism conversion of androgen to estrogen by the fat or the peripheral globules through a specific enzyme present over there, and these things are increased by alcohol, smoking, and obesity. So these factors basically are again the same thing. These lead to increased estrogenic state in the body, and these estrogenic state lead to increased risk of CA breast. That is why smoking and alcohol are obviously important things. The family history, we ask at the history of CA breast in the family running or not. How do we ask for it? And is what kind of family history is relevant? Is a person with a history of CA breast in her mother, which developed at 65 years of age, let's say, is relevant? Is it relevant or not? Is it contributory? A female with a history of CA breast in her mother at 65 years of age. What kind of family history is relevant?
Family history of maternal aunt or maternal side relatives having CA breast or CA ovary in early age.
Yeah. So the key point over there, I'm going to emphasize an early age CA breast. So a female, if has a history of CA breast in her mother at 65 years of age, then it is not relevant. It should be around, or at least below 40 years of age. That is what is relevant. Associated with ovary. Why is it ovary? Someone has said BRCA mutation. So which are the cancers associated with BRCA or BRCA mutations?
CA breast and CA ovary.
Apart from that,
Colonic cancer.
and another. So it's basically a constitution of symptoms which has a variety of cancers, commonly CA breast, second most common CA ovary, third most common CA colon and CA pancreas, followed by CA stomach. So these are the common, and prostate in males, as someone pointed out. These are the common cancers, but the most important is CA breast and then CA ovary. So you should know all these things, and both of them occurring in the early age group, not in the late age group, below 40 years of age. That is what is important. And treatment history, as I said, treatment history relevant. What is relevant is a history of previous biopsies or previous treatment in the same breast, if that is occurring or not. And this pretty much sums up the part of the history. Okay, so did they didn't get it? What I was trying to tell by you can easily get an diagnosis or provisional diagnosis in the base of history alone. The chief complaint that you need to ask, and the complaint associated with it, the chief complaint of pain and nipple discharge, both of them associated with each other. So there are only 4 complaints basically: pain, nipple discharge, lump, and associated with the opposite breast or the same breast. These are the 4 things only that are asked. Again, repeating myself, a lump in a young age group is fibroadenoma. A lump in a late age group is CA breast. In a middle age group is FCD. FCD has associated mastalgia, sometimes nipple discharge, which is generally serous. Duct papilloma has nipple discharge, which is generally bloody with no lump. Duct ectasia may have lump and associated with a serous to a bloody nipple discharge. CA breast is a painless lump. So these cover all the basic DDs and what all things you have to ask. There are just 4 things you have to ask. That is it. So not a long history, but it's an easier history if you remember it, dividing it into variety of pathology. Okay. And history of therapeutic radiation exposure is also important, as Samaj pointed out. It is important again if there is a therapeutic radiation exposure, as I had mentioned in the thyroid part, in the age group, in the childhood or in the age group of 20 to 30 years of age, with an history to head and neck or chest, okay, for anything, then these radiations can also lead to the high risk factor to CA breast. Okay. Yeah. So this is about the history part. Going to the examination part. So the next slide, please.
So, what about occipitals?
Sorry.
Some book says it is sir, occipitals. Some
Yeah.
book says
So
it's
occipitals is
contributory.
not a contributory factor. If someone asks, is occipitals contributory factor in the CA breast? So it is not a contributory factor. HRT is a contributory factor. When in earlier stages, earlier years, in the 2000s, so as to say, when occipitals were newly diagnosed, newly developed, the first and second generation occipitals had high estrogenic states. As you all know, you must have read in the PSM that nowadays there are low estrogenic occipitals used, that are the third or modern generation occipitals. These occipitals are not contributory or not relevant to CA breast. So if you specifically mention history of occipitals, then someone can ask you that is occipitals relevant, then you have to deny your own self. So don't mention occipitals, mention HRTs. So is the patient on hormone replacement therapy, or was he given hormone replacement therapy, yes or no? So these are important factors which you should discuss. If someone says that OCP is a contributing factor, then you have to defend yourself by saying that newer generation or current OCP that are available in the market are low estrogenic states, and so those are not risk factors for CA breast. Older generations or earlier, OCP is used where a risk factor, so OCP history is not relevant in this case. Okay, so that is how you have to take the middle path. As I said, always don't be radical. You should know both the answers. Is it relevant? Yes. When? And if no, when? So the examination.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Patient was examined after taking her consent and explaining her about the procedure. Patient is examined under proper light exposure and patient is conscious and well oriented to time, place and person. Patient is averagely built and well nourished. Temperature is normal by palpatory method. Pulse is 75 beats per minute, regular in rhythm, adequate in volume, force and tension, in right radial artery in supine position. Respiratory rate is 16 per minute. Blood pressure is 120/80 mmHg. No signs of pallor, edema, icterus, anemia, cyanosis, clubbing, and lymphadenopathy seen. Local examination, inspection. Patient is examined in sitting position. Breast, asymmetrical, right breast is slightly lower than left breast. Single lump of approx 4 by 5 centimeter size, globular in shape with irregular margin is seen in upper outer quadrant of right breast. Skin over breast, no scar, no redness or edema, no engorged veins, no dimpling, retraction, puckering, nodule, ulceration or purity orange seen. Nipple, symmetrical, right nipple is drawn up towards upper and outer quadrant, no retraction, no cracks or fissures or eczema, no discharge from nipple. Areola is bilaterally symmetrical in size, no cracks or fissures or eczema seen. Arm and thorax are normal. After raising hands above head, axilla supraclavicular fossa, no swelling burst. Submammary fold, no abnormality seen. Palpation, left breast normal, Right breast, temperature is no local rise in temperature. Tenderness absent. Single lump of 4 by 5 centimeter size, globular in shape with uneven surface, irregular margins. Hard consistency is present over outer and upper quadrant. Fixity to skin is absent. Fixity to breast tissue present. Fixity to pectoralis muscle and fascia present. Fixity to chest wall absent. Fixity to serratus anterior absent. Examination of regional lymph nodes, axillary nodes, anterior, lateral, posterior groups are not palpable. Central group, 2 centimeter nodes of approx 3 centimeter size, hard consistency, mobile and non-tender. Apical group not palpable. Supraclavicular nodes not palpable. Systemic examination not significant. Provisional diagnosis. From above history and examination, my probable diagnosis is malignant tumor of upper and outer quadrant of right breast of T2N1M0 stage 2B of TNM classification with enlargement of central axillary lymph nodes.
So, take to the first slide. You start off the examination by the first sentence that you used, that I've examined my patient in these positions. So just for the clarity of everyone, if you start off by saying that I have examined obviously my patient after taking informed consent in the presence of a female examiner or female attendant in sitting and supine position, and in sitting position I have used various positions like the arm by the side of the body, arm above the head, arm at the waist, and by leaning forward. These are the 4 positions in the sitting position that you use. So you have to start by saying this because it helps again make a good impression on your examiner, helps you score easy marks by showing him that you examined in various positions. Okay, you start off by saying that I have examined my patient after taking informed consent in the presence of a female attendant by in various positions. The inspection was primarily done in the sitting position. In the sitting positions, I have examined the patient with the arms by the side, arms above the head, arms on the waist, and with the breast leaning forward or the patient's body leaning forward. And in the palpation, I primarily examined the patient in the supine position with the arms by the side and arms above the head. Okay. So by this, you clarify each and every position you used in each and everything. So this is how you use it. Informed consent, female examiner, a female attendant, in inspection sitting with the 4 positions of arms, and in palpation supine with the 2 positions of the arms. This is how you use it. Okay, that's a very important thing. Please know and make a habit of saying it this way. All the positions are very important. Okay, so after that, the standard thing you do is proper light exposure is also fine. The general examination is okay. The local examination is the thing that you have to move on to after seeing the positions. So these are things that okay. In the local examination, inspection. So what do you see in inspection? Okay. Again, repeating all those points that you have seen in history and inspection are the same. You have to see for the lump. You have to see for a nipple discharge. These are the 2 things you see for the inspection. And in palpation, it's repeated in the same way. So first, the inspection. To start off by saying, I have first inspected or examined the normal lump, the normal breast, followed by the abnormal breast. That is how you start off. It's an important thing. The point why we raise this or we say this is, in a case of a female, each and every consistency of the breast is individual to the patient. So we start off by saying that I have first examined the normal or the unaffected breast, followed by the affected breast, because the consistency, the shape, the size is all compared with the unaffected. So I first examined the unaffected breast, and compared to that, the affected breast is, let's say, asymmetrical and whatever he has said. So what all things are you have to say? You have to say the shape of the breast, followed by that start off with the skin over the breast, the nipple areolar complex, and the lump. These are the 3 main subheadings in the breast. Okay. So the first shape of the breast is globular, asymmetrical, whatever it is, and is it any way related to the just like lower or above the corresponding breast. Then we start off the skin over the breast. Skin, lump, nipple discharge. The three things. The skin over the breast, is it inflamed or not? That way, is there any redness? Is there any tender? Is there any redness? Is there any engorged veins? Is there any edema? These three things for inflammation. Followed by that, are there any complications related to the cancer or the lump? For dimpling, retraction, and pudgy orange and ulceration. After that, you describe the lump, the size of the lump. If it is visible, obviously, if it is not visible by inspection, you can see that there is no lump visible by inspection. Or you can see there is fullness in the upper outer quadrant of the breast, and a lump cannot be defined because it is very more probable that you cannot see a lump or you cannot see the dimension of the lump by inspection. So it is very common in case of breast. So do not start off by saying 4 by 5 centimeter lump if you cannot see a lump by inspection. You can say it in palpation, not in inspection. So let's say you can see the lump. So assuming you can see the lump, it's a 4 by 5 centimeter lump, hard, firm, soft, cystic. These are the various consistencies. It is generally firm in case of an fibroadenoma, and hard in case of a breast cancer. Rice shape, consistency. Then you see the margins, irregular margins, well-defined margins, whatever is it. Followed by that, is there any tenderness associated with it? Sorry, is there any tenderness associated with it? These are the common points you say in the case of lump. Then you move on to the nipple discharge. On inspection, is some nipple discharge seen or not? Is the nipple cracked or not? Is the nipple inverted or not? Is the nipple retracted or not? These are the things you see in the inspection for the nipple discharge. Assuming you have a 4 by 5 centimeter lump with no nipple discharge, no retraction, all those things are fine, and you have palpated the lump, the local temperature tenderness is fine, and you see that the lump is 4 by 5 centimeter, hard in consistency, irregular margins, with no changes of the skin or no changes of the nipple. Then you most probably put a diagnosis of a CA breast. That is how you go about it. But if there are any complications, let's say there is nipple discharge. Sometimes there can be nipple discharge. Generally, it is not put in the case of a UG, but in cases, some cases, if there is a nipple discharge, you would describe on palpation if the nipple discharge is from a single duct or multiple ducts, that is single opening or multiple openings. What is the color of the discharge? Is the nipple discharge associated with menstruation, that is it cyclical or is it continuous? And obviously, if there is an underlying lump present or not. Okay. This is then followed with the palpation of the axilla and the axillary lymph node. So this is how you move about a general format about the inspection and palpation. If we start off individually, the changes in the skin. The changes in the skin are retraction, dimpling, pudgy orange, ulceration, nodules. Changing in the nipple are retraction and inversion. Okay. So what is skin dimpling? So someone tell me what is skin dimpling? Why does it happen?
Skin dimpling happens due to invasion of Cooper's ligament.
Yes, very good. And what is pudgy orange? What is pudgy orange?
Due to,
Yeah.
due to involvement of lymphatics.
Very good. So these are the important differentiator, which is a more point which favors the cancerous lesion as compared to in the both of them, pudgy orange or skin dimpling.
Pudgy orange.
Why? Okay. So the more prominent, the more pointing thing towards the cancerous lesion is skin dimpling and not pudgy orange. See, the basic mechanism behind it is skin dimpling occurs because of invasion of the Cooper's ligament, which leads to dimpling or tethering, so as to say, of the skin. And pudgy orange is basically invasion of the lymphatics. The lymphatics are blocked. Sometimes what happens is, in case of inflammation, like let's say a superficially rapidly spreading mastitis, say the appearance like pudgy orange because of the obstruction of lymphatics. Okay, the lymphatics can be obstructed in case of infection or rapidly spreading infection like streptococcus infection, but the skin involvement, that is is a classical sign seen in cancer. Basically, the lesion spreads out from its normal basement membrane, erodes it, and goes in the surrounding skin and goes in the ligament of Cooper and causes skin dimpling. Lymphatics is not because of just because of cancer vision, it can also be because of some invasion by an infection. So fluidy orange is not more suggestive, it is suggestive definitely, but the more suggestive out of the both is skin dimpling and not fluidy orange. Okay. The difference is as I explained why, and sometimes there is nipple attraction also, which is also a feature which is seen in CA breast. Okay. Okay. So this is what the skin. If there are skin is reddened, it is red in color and with dilated veins, what does it indicate? If there is a lump with red skin or inflamed skin and dilated veins.
Infection.
Yes, one infection. Secondly,
Inflammatory cancer.
yeah, but which what are these? Okay, a very common differential after we reach to the palpation or inspection part in a CA breast is phyllodes tumor. Okay, the phyllodes tumor sometimes has reddened or inflamed skin, not as reddened or as red and tender as in case of infections, and it has dilated, engorged veins over the lump. It is huge as compared to a CA breast. So phyllodes tumor is a large lump with dilated veins and sometimes red skin or normal skin over the breast, occurring in a 40 to 45-year-old female only. So that is the phyllodes, an important differential diagnosis. Sometimes we cannot know it unless we do a biopsy, definitely. But generally, what the difference between phyllodes and CA breast is, the phyllodes is a larger lump. It has dilated veins over it, and it is generally not fixed to the underlying tissues. It can be a malignant phylloid which is fixed to the underlying tissues, but by and far, a benign phylloid is a larger, faster growing lump, disproportionate with reddened or inflamed skin, not tender. See, mind where it is not tender, okay? It is inflamed. Tender is by palpation, just inspecting the skin, and engorged veins. Obviously, another differential diagnosis can be an abscess also. An abscess can have reddened skin, inflamed skin, tender, more importantly, and fever. The infections will have fever with it. So, if there is no fever, there's less likely to be an infection. Okay. So these are the common two DDs with red skin and engorged veins over it, apart from CA breast. CA breast does not have generally red skin and engorged veins. It can have sometimes, but normally it does not have. Normally the DDs are first infection, mastitis, abscess, and secondary phyllodes tumor. Yeah. So if there is none of these findings, we just move on to the palpation parts. But if there is reddened skin, you have to keep the differential and diet. If there is a nipple discharge, you have to see which type of discharge is it. You can't see if it is a single or multi-duct discharge. If someone asks you on basis of infection, within the basis of inspection, you have to palpate it. Okay. So in palpation, the first thing you see is temperature. Okay. Temperature raised or not of the breast. So infection present or not, tenderness, the same thing. Then you see the lump. You palpate the consistency, size, shape, margins, as you all do in case of any of the lump. Here, if it is a mobile lump, okay, that is what down to comes with. So first, the mobility with the breast. So if it's a mobile lump, it moves freely within the breast. What is the kind of lump that we are suggestive of? If it is a firm mobile lump within the breast, what is it?
Hyperadenoma.
Perfect. So what is the other name of fibroadenoma?
Breast mouse.
Yeah. So after we come to palpation, we have definitely suggestive one diagnosis. Starting from the first part, a 20-25-year-old female with a painless lump with no history of nipple discharge, no history of pain, gradually growing lump, on inspection a small size lump or not visible lump, and on palpation a freely mobile lump within the breast tissue, it's a fibroadenoma. All these points, as I said, one by one, is a fibroadenoma. If contrary, a 50-year-old female with a painless, gradually progressing, increasing size lump associated with occasional nipple discharge or no nipple discharge with no fever, no complaint in the opposite breast, with some history, let's say early menarche, late menopause or something like that, or HRT maybe, or as I said, commonly seen in practicals, a history of biopsy of the breast occurring previously with again a lump which is not visible, let's say, or visible just partly with no other complaints, no nipple retraction, no PUD, or no all those complications, and a firm or a hard lump. It can be firm, it can be hard, so as to say, and fixed to the breast tissue, points toward the CA breast. So what is fixed to the breast tissue? Can someone elicit that? How do I elicit fixed to the breast tissue?
It is done with the help of two hands. By one hand, the lump is held, and by other hand, the breast tissue is moved. If the lump is moved, and if breast tissue moves with lump, then fixity is present. Else
Yeah.
not.
You won't be able to move the lump if you fix it with the one hand. Okay. Basically, fixed to the breast tissue is tested by using two hands. So by using one of your hand, you fix the breast tissue, and using the other hand, you move the lump within that breast tissue. If it is able to move, it is a non-fixed or not fixed lump. If the lump does not move, because you have fixed the breast tissue, it does not move, it is a fixed lump. Okay, it is fixed to the breast tissue. It is a suggestive feature of malignancy. Why? Because malignancy basically spreads by eroding the surrounding tissue. Imagine a acini or a stroma, let's say a stroma of the breast, and there is a lump growing in it. If it is just present inside it and does not invade the lobules, or it respects the anatomy of the lobules, the lump will easily move, as in case of fibroadenoma. If it destroys the lobules or the septa in between each and invades from one lobule to the another, it will be fixed to the breast lump. If it invades the lobule in the stroma and comes out and invades the ligaments of Cooper, there will be skin retraction or skin tethering. If its skin still invades this, it goes either superiorly and invades the skin, or inferiorly and invades or posteriorly, sorry, anteriorly and posteriorly, and posteriorly and invades the chest wall, followed by the ribs and the pectoral and the serratus anterior and all those muscles. That is our breast lump or a CA breast spreads, and we should know each of these things, and that is why we ask for each of these things. So fixed to the breast is done, fixed to the chest wall. How is it that tested? What is fixed to the chest wall?
For fixity to chest wall, the patient is asked to lean forward. If it moves forward, then fixity to chest wall is absent. The other way is to check the fixity to pectoralis muscle, which is also present on chest wall.
Okay. And how do we do that?
For that, the first we check the lump is mobile or not along the direction of pectoralis muscle fibers when muscle is relaxed. And secondly, we check when the muscle is contracted. For checking when muscle is relaxed, the arms are laid on the side of the patient, and then the lump is moved along the fibers of pectoralis muscle direction, in that direction. And if it doesn't move, then fixity is present.
So
Fixity is not present.
two or three mistakes. That's fine, but a few mistakes. The first thing is the fixity to the chest wall is checked after check the fixity to the pectoralis major. So that is why I was asking that. If someone directly asks you fixity to the chest wall, you first tell that the first thing it goes in sequence, as I said. The first is breast tissue, then it is pectoralis major, then it is chest wall or skin, whatever it is. Either going anteriorly, posteriorly. The first thing after the breast tissue, I will confirm the fixity to the pectoralis major present or not, and then I will see the fixity to the chest wall. Yeah, by inspection, one of the ways, as you said, is by leaning forward, by asking the patient to lean forward. If the breast falls down or comes down, there is no fixity to chest wall. If it doesn't fall, there can be suggestive of fixity to chest wall present. That is by inspection. That is, you ask the patient to lean forward, and if the breast doesn't fall down, it is suggestive of fixity to chest wall. To confirm it, how do you do it? Okay. So first thing is you check fixity to the pectoralis major. Is fixity to pectoralis major a criteria of fixity to chest wall? Yes or no? If
No.
someone says no, right? So that is what you said. You said fixity to chest wall is by fixity to pectoralis major. It is not that way. In the staging of cancer, that is what ultimately we want to prove, the TNM staging. Fixity to chest wall does not include pectoralis major. This is very important. It does not include pectoralis major. T major fixity is not what makes it fixity to chest wall. So for testing the fixity to pectoralis major, I will first of all ask the patient and examine the patient with the patient in the relaxed position. In it, I will ask the patient to put his arms on his waist. I will first of all check that the patient has relaxed his pectoralis major by checking the anterior axillary fold. and palpating the pectoralis major to be relaxed. Followed by that, I will palpate the fixity to the pectoralis major by moving the lump both parallel and perpendicular to the muscles of pectoralis major. This is followed by asking the patient to taut the pectoralis major and confirming it by again palpating the anterior axillary fold, and then I will ask it again. I will again palpate the lump parallel and perpendicular to the pectoralis major. This is how you tell it. You say it sequentially. You first say that I will ask the patient to relax the muscle and confirm it is relaxed. Then I will check parallel and perpendicular to the muscle. The third thing, I will ask the patient to taut and confirm it is taut by checking the anterior axillary fold, and then parallel and perpendicular to the muscle fibers. Okay. How do you say to how do you ask the patient to taut the muscle? You will ask the patient to press his hands on his waist. After the patient presses her hand on the waist, the anterior axillary fold will become taut, or the pectoralis major will basically become taut, and the lump will not be able to move perpendicular to it if it is fixed. Okay, it will not be able to move across and parallel perpendicular to it if it is fixed. If it is not fixed, then it is fine. It moves. So fixed to the chest wall basically means fixed to the underlying ribs, underlying intercostal muscles, or serratus anterior, or some other muscles that are present posteriorly. That is checked by confirming that the muscle is the lump is first of all fixed to the pectoralis major, because that is the first thing to happen. After fixated to P major, the fixated to chest wall is checked. This is checked by a few things. First, as I said, as by inspection you can do that. The second thing is by checking the fixated to serratus anterior. So how do you do that? You ask the patient to lean against a wall. You have all done that. Lean against the wall and press against the wall. That makes the serratus anterior taut in the posterior axillary fold, and then check the mobility again across and parallel to the muscle fibers. And if it is movable, then it is not fixed. If it is not movable, then it is fixed. Okay. Another thing to see for a spread lump is seeing any ulceration or fixity to the skin, the dermis, so as to say. So by checking the fixity to dermis, you do what do you do? How do you check that fixity to dermis?
We try to pinch the skin over the lump.
Yeah, we basically try to pinch the skin over the lump. The other thing we do is we move the lump, and if the lump moves cannot move independently of the skin, it is considered fixed to the skin. So again, just to clarify, skin tethering or skin dimpling or skin retraction and skin fixity are different things. Okay, how is it different? Skin tethering or skin dimpling is because of invasion of ligament of Cooper that does not qualify as spread to the skin. Spread to the skin is qualified when the skin and the lump cannot move independent of each other. Okay, you try to move the lump independent of the skin and it does not move. The skin moves above it, or you try to pinch the skin above the lump and it cannot be pinched. These two things indicate fixity to skin. You try to move the lump and the lump moves, but there is dimpling of the skin. That is dimpling or tethering. That does not qualify as fixity to skin or does not qualify as spread to skin. This is an important concept, so please clarify that. So this basically sums up all the fixities. The fixity to the breast tissue, fixity to the pectoralis major, to the chest wall, serratus anterior, and to the skin. Okay. Yeah. So and difference between tethering and fixity to the skin. So next we move on. What is the next slide? The palpation part, fixity after fixity. You have described the lump, you have described the margin, the shape, the size, consistency. You have ruled out fibroadenoma, you have ruled out FCDs by the variety of symptoms and all those things. You have ruled out duct ectasia, duct discharge, duct papilloma, and you have seen the staging of the CA breast. Basically, you have ruled out or included CA breast as I first said, and you are trying to see the complications of the spread. After the palpation of fixity of the breast comes the palpation of the axilla. So what do you do in the axilla? Palpate the axilla. How do you palpate the nodes? Describe me in a proper manner as you describe in the examination.
While for palpating axillary nodes, all the nodes are palpated by standing in front of the examiner, except for the central node and posterior group of nodes, which are palpated from the by standing back on the back of the patient. For palpating anterior nodes, we ask the patient to first of all, we palpate axillary nodes with the help of the opposite hand. For example, if we are palpating on the right side, we use left hand, except for central and posterior groups, for which we use the same hand. For anterior nodes, we palpate it after contracting the pectoralis major muscle, which can be done by asking the patient to put the hand on the forearm of the examiner. Then the anterior nodes are felt. If they are felt, then they are palpable. For lateral, we palpate it over the shaft of the humerus. And for central group, we palpate it over the ribs, second, third, and fourth ribs. For
Yes.
apical group, we palpate with the help of two hands, one in the axilla between the anterior and posterior axillary fold, and second,
Continue. Hello.
yes, sir.
Okay, so again, the position of the patient was important. You should start again. The rest of the things were perfect. The positions of the groups were perfect, but the important thing was the position of the patient. So I will palpate the axillary lymph nodes in a sitting position. The patient will be sitting in front of the knee for majority of the examination. For a few nodes, I will go posterior to the patient. That is how you start. Then you say that I will make the patient sit in front of me. I will, for example, palpating the right breast in your case, I will use my left hand. I will place the patient's hand on my forearm. That's a very important thing. As you can see over here, the patient's forearm is on the examiner's forearm. That is a very important key point. If you do that much, and my second arm or the examiner's second arm is on the opposite shoulder to stabilize the shoulder girdle, so as to say, if you do these two things, the examiner will know that you have palpated the nodes actually somewhere. Okay, so if you haven't done it, do it on your colleague or anyone in front of you. Basically, I will ask the patient to put his arm on my forearm. I will palpate the axilla with the opposite hand. Basically, if for palpating a right breast, I will use my left hand. I will put the patient's right arm on my left forearm. I will stabilize the shoulder girdle with my opposite hand. For palpating the anterior group of lymph nodes, I will palpate in the anterior axillary fold as seen over here. The anterior axillary fold is palpated. I will roll my finger and see for any lymph nodes. For palpating the central group of lymph nodes, I will insinuate my finger in the apex of the axilla. That is how the central lymph nodes are palpated. For apical, even you go even deeper and palpate against the second, third, and fourth rib, as Birvaj pointed out. For the lateral group of lymph nodes, the opposite hand will still sit in front of the patient, but the opposite hand is used. That is basically you use the same hand, so as to say. For the right breast, you use your right hand and you palpate against the shaft of the femur, shaft of the humerus. Sorry, you palpate against the shaft of the humerus. So you use the same hand to palpate the shaft of the humerus and roll your fingers and confirm the presence of lymph node in the lateral group. And for the posterior group, you will go behind the patient and you will palpate in the posterior axillary fold, so as to say, using the same arm. That is how you palpate it. Okay. So I hope you all got that. Using your arm as a support to stabilize the shoulder girdle on the opposite shoulder, and using your other arm inside wherever you want to palpate it, either in the anterior axillary fold, in the apex, or on the shaft of the humerus, and you roll your fingers and you see it. You go posteriorly and see the posterior axillary fold. And if there is some lump palpable, you see whether the lump is mobile or not. Basically, you want to see the axillary nodes and axillary nodes if it is mobile or not. If the axillary nodes are mobile, then it is and present, then it is a N1 stage if the axillary nodes are not mobile or they are fixed. It's an N2 stage. That is why you want to see all these things. And ultimately, you also end by saying that I palpated the supraclavicular nodes also. For the supraclavicular nodes, again, you go behind the patient. You ask the patient to shrug his or her shoulders, and you palpate in the supraclavicular fossa that is seen for the completion, obviously, because supraclavicular nodes are which nodes in the TNM staging? If the supraclavicular lymph nodes are present, then what staging does it mean in the end staging?
N3.
Yeah, that is why it's important. It is not the axillary nodes 1, 2, 3. It is an end staging. Okay, it's N3 staging supraclavicular lymph nodes. Followed by that, you also have to specify that I have palpated the opposite breast for axillary nodes also, because if the opposite breast also has axillary nodes, what does that qualify as? If the opposite breast has some axillary nodes, is it, what type of staging is it?
Metastasis.
Exactly, it is an M1 staging, the metastasis stages. And sometimes the examiner will ask that have you palpated the internal memory nodes? And how do you palpate it? How do you palpate the internal memory nodes, and what is it signified if the nodes are palpable?
If
We
nodes are
can't
palpable, then it signifies N2B.
How do you palpate it?
With that, I don't know.
we can't palpate the internal memory lymph nodes.
Cannot palpate it, then is there some way you know that the nodes are palpable and that the nodes are involved basically?
Seen on radiology.
Definitely. So your first answer should always be this, that the internal memory nodes are not palpable clinically. It's not possible to palpate it. If these are basically known by radiological investigations, USG, that is. But if someone still insists that is there some method to know clinically without any radiological investigations to know the internal memory nodes, see, the first answer should be you cannot palpate it. But if someone insists, you can say that internal memory nodes are not palpable, but that they can be percussed. Basically, if you percuss along the side of the sternums on both the side, and if you see somewhere a dull node specifically, it is sometimes indicative of an internal memory node being enlarged. But that is the answer you should say only and only if you are pressed upon it. That if is there some clinical way to palpate it, otherwise you do not tell it. Okay, that is how you define. And ultimately, I have also looked for any bony tenderness, any abdominal lump, or any abnormality seen in the respiratory system to rule out metastasis to all these three things: the spine, to the abdomen, and to the lungs. This is how you conclude your examination, and then you say that so most probably my diagnosis is a 45-year-old female with no comorbidities, with a lump in the right breast, most probably of malignant etiology, with, let's say, spread, as in a case, let's say, with palpable or fixed central axillary nodes, and no other signs of metastasis, thus it being T2N1 or T3N1 and stage 2B, whatever it is. Okay, you do not tell it first. In her diagnosis, she has put the staging first and then the nodes palpation. But my point was, you first say the lump, describe the axillary nodes and mates present or not, and then you see the staging, TNM, and then the stage specifically. Okay, that is how you finish the examination of breast. Is there any doubts in the examination? It's a very simple thing. There are a few histories, as I have repeated again and again, a few examination points, specifically the lump and nipple discharge, the fixity to the various parts, and the various named features like dimpling and tethering and pudioring. That is all that is. But a few points, as I mentioned out, are things that you miss out, as like examination of the spine. It's an important thing. Okay, why is examination spine an important thing? What is the most common site of metastasis in a case of CA breast?
Lumbar vertebrae.
Exactly.
Lumbar vertebrae.
The second most common site?
Shade of femur.
Apart from the bones, after bones,
Lung involvement.
and after lung,
Liver.
after liver.
Brain.
Perfect. This is the sequence as it goes. The first most common site is the bones, in which the lumbar vertebrae is the most common. That is followed by the lung, that is for the liver, and that is followed by the brain. Why is the most common site is a lumbar vertebra? That is, obviously the question will come if you say a lumbar vertebra, why is it most common side?
Waitson's plexus.
Exactly. So what is it? What is Batterson's plexus?
It is a venous drainage of breast.
So Batterson's plexus is basically a paravertebral plexus. So from the veins within the breast, it goes to the paravertebral veins, and through that paravertebral plexus, it goes to the lumbar vertebra. That is how the spread to lumbar plexus or lumbar vertebra occurs. Okay. Yeah. So I guess this pretty much sums up the examination part. Does anyone have some doubts? Then please type in the chat box or unmute themselves and ask. The common history point, the personal history, the past history, and the history of treatment is important, as I mentioned, and in inspection and palpation, the fixities and the various lymph node palpation is important. It's a very simple thing. You just have to go one by one, and you will come to the diagnosis of CA breast. Staging is important. If you do not know the staging, T1 is less than 2, T2 is 2 to 5 centimeter, T3 is more than 5 centimeter, T4 involves spread to the skin or spread to the chest wall. And as I said, it is an important thing. Spread to the skin is not skin tethering, spread to the chest wall is not spread to the pectoralis major. So T4 is only if I fix it to the chest wall and not fixed to T major. There is skin involvement with fixity, not skin tethering. That is why I'm repeating it again. That is T4, or ulceration or nodules or something like that, or PUD orange appearance. N1 is again only intermemory nodes which are axillary nodes which are mobile. N2 is fixed axillary nodes or any intermemory nodes. N3 is both of them are present, or there is a supraclavicular node present, that is outside the axilla. Okay, that is how you say it. An opposite axilla node is M1, and obviously skin, bony tendons and all that are also M1. That is why TNF staging is important. You should know the TNF staging of only this cancer. No other TNF staging are important. And a final question is, what is triple assessment? That pretty much sums up it.
Clinical, radiological, and histopathological examination.
So a clinical examination or radiological followed by any pathological, not specifically histopathological, pathology examination like FNAC or histopath. Because that is what we proceed for a case of CA breast. You do first an history, rule out the important points as already mentioned. You do more on examination. That's the first thing, interpersonal history and physical examination. The second is radiological examination. Radiological examination includes mammography in USG, mammo in case of more than 40 years, USG less than 40 years, and the third is any invasive test, most probably a biopsy or an FNAC. Okay, FNAC for a younger individual, biopsy for older individual, but the more sensitive overall is biopsy. Okay, so this is triple assessment, which is done in all cases. Last one or two questions: what is commonly done in a case of young woman and why, and what is done in an older woman and why in terms of mammo and USG?
In young female, USG is done, and in older female, mammography is done.
Why?
Because mammography doesn't detect dense tissue, and in young, the breast tissue is comparatively more dense.
Mammography, for mammography, the background should be something that is more conducive to pick up lesions. So in older individuals, the background has more fat, that is the surrounding has more fat. In younger, it is more dense, more stroma present. That is why you cannot pick up easily, because already the background is denser and there is more stroma, so you cannot pick up a specific individual lesion. That is why mammography is not used for screening in younger individuals and used in older individuals. And for FNAC and biopsy, which is more sensitive and more specific.
More specific is TrueCut, but it leaves scars. So in benign condition, FNSC is used.
So overall, the better answer, if you have to choose about from one thing, FNAC or biopsy, it's the biopsy, because nowadays biopsies are not very much invasive. They are sonographic guided, and there are special biopsy instruments like biopsy gun So that means that is there are not a lot of scarring present. It's a very small pinpoint needle-like opening present, not even a scar, not even an incision. So because biopsy can tell us actually what it is, and FNAC sometimes has a lot of false positive, false negative results. So in this case specifically, biopsy for CA or for breast, biopsy is a better answer. Okay. Yeah, so that is all I would like to tell you about the examination of breast. If someone wants to go into the details of theory part of CA breast and what are the treatment options and everything, maybe we can take up in the next class. We can discuss it if anyone wants or not. If you don't want, we can take the next topic in the next class. Okay. Thank you very much. And see you next time. Yeah.